afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friday Drinks, where today the patients have truly taken over the asylum. Not only is our producer not around, Tinashe is still away on his travels. So they've left, can you imagine? They've left the studio to me and my good friend Tino to host this show. So it's actually going to be a lot like the original show. It's going to be much more irreverent, where there's not going to be much discipline. We're going to go in and out of rabbit holes. We're just generally going to have a jolly good time. And I hope you find the conversation as fun and interesting as we do. So welcome, welcome, Tino. And you're looking quite dapper today. You actually, if Tinashe was here, I suspect you'd put him to shame with this African attire. Did you get that here or somewhere else in Africa?
Got it from Rwanda, actually. And on Fridays is my African day. So every Friday, dress down is African.
That's fantastic. I wonder why we don't actually see more of that. I think there was a conversation the other day about judges. They still wear these wigs and gowns that from the era of the British courts. Why don't we have African attire in our courts and as an alternative to suits like a lot of other places on the continent? I think it's quite interesting, and I'm really chuffed that you've taken it upon yourself to express being African every Friday. I'm inspired. I actually need to add a bunch of these to my wardrobe. Otherwise, what are you drinking today? You seem to be taking it easy.
Yeah, since your Friday drinks start in the afternoon, I just thought, take it easy. Need to get home in one piece. So I'm sticking to the river, Zambezi, Zimbabwe's premier beer. I think the best beer ever made globally. And every time foreigners...
You rated that highly?
That highly. Every time foreigners come in to this country, the first thing they look for is the Zambezi beer. So yeah, thanks to Delta.
But Delta doesn't export it anymore. Why do you think that is? If it's world class, if it's so good.
But I think if you remember back in the days, in our analyst days, markets. Well,
once an analyst, always an analyst. I still identify as an analyst.
You identify as an analyst, gender neutral. So they keep their markets contained. BAT does the same thing. So I think SAB Miller as well, which is why you won't find Zambian brews in Zimbabwe. You won't walk into the
so you won't have Mosi, you won't have
unless it's imported by an individual
or a distributor.
Distributor. You won't find any of those anyway. So it's just about containing a market and having a monopoly in a geographical area. Yeah. And focusing on that. So the same company will have different branches in different countries, but they just won't cannibalize on their market shares.
Okay, it makes sense. But yeah, look, we definitely desperately crave dollars in this part of the world. And if we could create an export market, maybe not even in Africa, in Europe or Australia or the US, I think it's something worth considering. If it's as good as you claim it is. I'm not particularly fond of it. But on this side of the bar, obviously, we were away last week, so there were two teetotalers desecrating our bar. So I thought that an interesting whiskey would be a good way to redeem it. And I've chosen this Oban. It's one of the smallest distilleries in Scotland. And because it's so small, it's actually, they distill the whiskey in some of the smallest stills in the world. So the marketing story is that, it's small batch, limited, but I think it's decent. And hopefully you'll join me and
glass is over there. So please forgive me if I get up at any point
and
to join you.
And you can share your opinion. Look, there's a bunch of interesting things to talk about this week. We set up this Mutapa investment fund.
Yep. The name. I love the name.
Why?
Mutapa. That's where Zimbabwe is actually.
But what happened to the Mutapa Empire? Does the story have a happy ending?
Well, depends who wrote the history books.
Anyway, the name notwithstanding, we now have our very own sovereign wealth fund, and I was thinking about it. You know, does it actually, like, at a very high level, philosophically, does it make sense to have, for a country to have a sovereign wealth fund, like beyond a pot of cash for, you know, emergencies, right? Does it make sense? So if you know, and in thinking about this, you know, what occurred to me was the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund. So it's one of the biggest wealth funds in the world. It's one of the most successful wealth funds in the world. You know, it's got, so the guys, you know, the guys running it are managing about $1.5 trillion. Yeah, you know, and Norway is actually a small country from a population perspective. There's only about 5.4 million of them, right? And I did the numbers. If they just shut it down tomorrow and said, you know what, this is actually not the government's money, it's you, the people's money. We're winding this thing up. Here's a check for everyone, right? It would be a check for 274K for every citizen.
Wow.
In Norway.
That's fantastic.
And I was thinking to myself, like, and here's the question that I'll pose to you. If you were a Norwegian citizen, right, and they had a referendum tomorrow, let's continue managing this fund as is, or you know what, it's actually your money. If, you know, if you want it, we can just wind this thing up and give you your money, and you can do whatever you want with it. What you know, what would you choose if you were in that scenario?
Well, it's not fair for the future generation, is it? If we were to wind up today and pay it out to the people today, what about the children that are being born now? So I think such funds should continue, but when it comes to dividends and royalties, that you can pay out, but the actual asset itself must continue sweating. That's
but when it comes to future generations, I agree with you that we should care about our grandchildren and you know, those who come after them. And I'll pose another philosophical question, which is, who's going to look out for your grandchildren and your lineage more? You, as Tino, or a government bureaucrat in an air-conditioned office somewhere, you know, abstractly thinking about preserving the future generations' wealth. Like, are you if so again, if we come back to my hypothetical, right, that 274K, right, are you gonna do a better job of looking out for your lineage than some guy who's never met you and probably will never meet you, but he knows he's responsible for your wealth and everybody else's wealth? Who's gonna do a better job?
I am. Because no, the thing is, I'm an investment manager, right?
Yeah.
Corporate finance. But if you were to give someone 250K or 240K today, some are going to go buy cars immediately. Yeah. Some will take a picture and post it on Facebook. Some will go to Pablo's and have a good time and pop champagne. Some will buy watches and, you know. So this is the reason why the state is there. No. The state is there. That's the reason why we've got laws, we've got police. The state is there to govern people on a level playing field.
Yeah.
If you allow individuals to start doing their own thing, it's not always going to end well. And which is a fact, even in family.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, one of the reasons why I like to push back a lot about when people talk about equality in society is that if you look at any typical family, right, with two parents and several children, right, and you look at their life outcomes. So they grew up with the same parents in the same household. They went to the same schools, right? They had access to the same opportunities.
Yeah.
If they all live to 50, and then you actually look at their lives on their 50th birthday and say, you know, what is their net worth? You know, what have they achieved in their lives? It's unlikely that they will all have achieved equally.
Of course. Right?
They'll have different outcomes, right? So if people who are growing up in the same household have different outcomes, how do you expect groups of people in the whole society to have the same outcomes? It's just not going to work. But again, philosophically, if we say we're talking about future generations, right? Some people in Norway aren't going to have children. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that means more money for them.
So that argument won't resonate with them, that this is about future generations of Norwegians. They're going to say, well, you know, I want my cut. They are. They've probably got power.
utilities, all of that. I mean, the fund is generating income, right? So it's soft. You don't feel them. They're not hard benefits. It's soft benefits, right? Quality of life. So they probably have a very good quality of life because of the fund. So they are enjoying it. They are enjoying it.
So you don't think that there should be a cap where, like, if the fund gets to a certain size per capita, you know, so right now in Norway it's 274k per person. If that fund did really well over the next 10 years, for example, and that number became, say, $1 million per person, should they continue? Or should they cut off at $500,000 and say, listen, to the extent that it grows beyond $500,000, we're going to give people checks?
Which is fine.
What do you think?
Which is fine. I mean, companies do that, right? When you, BAT pays out dividends religiously, right? So instead of reinvesting, they're okay, guys, we've reached capacity. Here's money, year in, year out. You're paying you out. So what they can do is, okay, fine, we're no longer going to look for new investments. If anything, if some investments aren't working, sell them and divvy out the money, pay it out to the people. Which is fine. But the fund itself
should continue to exist.
I think should continue to
into
exist.
perpetuity.
I think so. The more it grows, it doesn't need to continue growing if they stop investing in new stuff. Just start whatever it is that's performing well, pay it out, and stop dishing out. You know, no fund has done quite well in Zim. I've come across here and there. So
are you
we're not saying
are you speaking for yourself and your colleagues?
We're not saying you must stop giving Zimbabwe money in no fund. Thank you. We still like it. So yeah.
Okay, so let's say we agree that a country should have a sovereign wealth fund. The next big question at a high level is who should run it, right? Should it have a full-time manager who's actively managing it, or should it be passively managed? You know, and the reason why I ask this question is because, you know, in 2007, Warren Buffett issued this challenge. I don't know whether you're aware of it, where he basically said, you know, to the hedge fund industry that you guys are a scam, right? 99% of you underperform the benchmark, and the benchmark globally is the S&P 500. And he issued a challenge. He said, look, if you think that you can outperform the S&P 500 over the next 10 years, I'm willing to bet $1 million. And there's a hedge fund manager who, in his infinite wisdom, took up the challenge. The name of the fund is called Protege Partners. And 10 years later, he had underperformed. You know, so he lost the bet. And anyway, so you can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, 100%. So going back to your question, should it be actively managed? Yes and no. You definitely need a proper fund manager, someone who actually understands what it is. Not a trader, a fund manager. Two different things. Buying in and out equities like a broker, no. You need to look at fundamentals, you need to look at growth, you need to look long term, right? So going in and out of a position because of a short term dip, or, you know, and you now panic and you buy and you sell. If you're buying into a business, you have to make sure that, you know, it can defend itself against competition. So it's a strong business. It must have good growth potential. It must have good cash flows, right? And sustainability going forward. And obviously management is very important. So you can invest in a good idea. So let's say timber. Timber is a good idea. But if you don't have the right management, how many timber companies have we seen struggling in Zim? Quite a lot. But it's a good business. So sometimes it's about just the management that's in place that then matters. So I think, yes, long term, not too active, but when an opportunity comes up, you take it. If you want to dispose of some weak assets that are draining you, do so. Yeah. So
you don't think you should just buy the S&P and forget about it? Because S&P outperforms 90% of fund managers globally. So why would anybody, isn't it hubris to think that you can be amongst the 10% that or it's actually not 10%, it's much less than 10% that outperform the S&P 500. So why would, if you are setting up a sovereign wealth fund, why would you actually put an active manager? If it was up to me, and I'm just being the devil's advocate here, I would just say, I'll just create the fund as a legal entity, and I would create mechanisms so that when money comes in,
Yeah.
it just buys the S&P 500.
Yeah.
The end.
It's very clear and very obvious you've never worked for government. So, I definitely had the same thoughts before I joined government. But it gave me an appreciation that government has got different drives and different social issues that they're trying to address that are not necessarily purely about money or performance. I'll give an example. Base stations in rural areas might not be the best use of money, but we're trying to include people who are out there in the mobile network system. So that, or even a road in, I don't know, Kanyemba, which I'm sure will be fixed very soon. Kanyemba is the next big thing. So a road in Kanyemba, or Mzarabani, it's not going to be, nobody's going to take care of it if it's purely a commercial thing. So it's not purely commercial. Government has to look at the whole country and everyone in it. Young and old also have different needs. Rural and urban have different needs. So government is a great neutralizer.
Okay, so I'm tempted to get into a rabbit hole about whether we should actually be doing such things as putting base stations in the middle of nowhere and building roads to the middle of nowhere. But that aside, right? If we agree that it's a good idea to build base stations in the middle of nowhere and roads and clinics and other infrastructure, surely the thing that moves the needle is money, right? Yeah. If you have more money, you can do more.
Yes.
If you have less money, you can do less.
Yes.
So if you're managing a country's wealth,
right,
your primary objective is to maximize the return. Because if the higher your return, the more you have to spend on these things. The lower your return, the less you can spend on these things.
I disagree with you completely. Government is supposed to be the great equalizer, right? If it was purely about profit, we would all be Zimplats. And but the royalties from Zimplats, royalties that Zimplats is paying, is fixing our Alps road is now open.
Exactly. So you want Zimplats to actually be 10 times bigger than it is, so that it contributes 10 times more in royalties, so that you have 10 times more money to do these things.
But who's going to fix Alps road?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you're managing the wealth fund, right, shouldn't your primary and only objective be to maximize return? And then when you pay dividends, we can fix Alps road, we can build rural schools and electrify places in the middle of nowhere. We can do all these noble things that you want to do because we're generating the cash flow to do it. Okay. So shouldn't that be the only thing that a sovereign wealth fund exists to do? Okay. Its only mandate.
I'll ask you something. NRZ, right, needs fixing.
Yes, of course, it's broken.
Right, sovereign wealth fund, funds are there, right?
Yeah.
We go and park our money at the S&P. If we fix NRZ, we can move coal and everything cheaper, way cheaper, immediately, right? So if we purely think about the immediate profit, then I think we're losing it. Yeah,
but okay. So I like that you've mentioned NRZ, and I'm going to push back a little bit and just point out that we've been fixing NRZ for the last 30 years. Or 20 at least. It's been broken for that long. So if you gave me $100 million and you said, here's two options, you can fix NRZ or you can put it on the S&P, guess what I'm going to do?
S&P.
And then I'll use the cash flows from that to do good things. I think, but we're going to get to the NRZs and the other things that were put into Mutapa. I just want to, at a very high level, have that debate about, should it have an active manager? And, so if we agree that it shouldn't just be about getting a return, that it should have an active manager, what other mandates should the sovereign wealth fund have apart from generating a return?
Well, I think the Act stipulates that, but when you say other mandates,
when I think about a fund, any fund, right, I'm thinking return, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, some funds,
which is key. Don't get me twisted.
Yeah.
Return is number one priority.
100%.
Yeah.
But funds will, like, if I set up a solar fund, for example, I can have the aspiration to get a positive return from the investment. But I'm saying I'm investing in solar energy, which is green, and I'm solving a power problem. So that's my, second and third objective, right? So
Yeah.
the fund is not allowed to buy delta. Because it's a solar fund. So funds are created with, yes, every fund exists to generate a return, but there are also other reasons why you set up the fund. And so I'm just asking the question at a high level for like a national sovereign wealth fund, apart from generating a return, what else should it be?
It should be a good citizen. So
Okay.
look at the fund as an individual, as a model citizen. So a model citizen does good things for the greater benefit of the community, right? So the fund in itself, like you're saying, should look at green projects, should look at infrastructure. So I think clamoring it down to specifics would be a bit limited because we're in a changing world. So right now I'd look at sustainability, which is key now. Like you mentioned, going green, which is very important. Infrastructure, which is quite important. And then also it needs to get rid of the dead weight, right?
Okay.
Maybe we don't need to have more than, I don't know, government doesn't need to own more than one health insurance. I mean, how many do they own? Quite a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to now
Consolidate. So that actually brings
quite a few things.
That brings me to the next part of the conversation around the wealth fund, and we're now drilling down into Mutapa itself,
Yeah.
right? So we're calling it a wealth fund, right? And we put all these zombies in there, these companies that have been losing money for 10, 20 years, Air Zimbabwe, NRZ, Cold Storage Commission, right?
But why have they been losing money?
Well, they've been badly
Because
run.
they've been sitting under ministries.
Okay, yeah.
So each one, Ministry of Transport. This one is Ministry of Lands. It's not being managed by a fund manager, right? So the issue is that because a specific ministry doesn't want to lose that asset or doesn't want to lose the cash generatingness of it or the convenience of having that asset under the line ministry. That's how these companies have started deteriorating.
They haven't started, they've been deteriorating for like 10, 20
remember,
years.
I'm a former government official. I have to speak the right words. Chirimo.
It's okay. If you have
Even
a few
the
of these,
I think maybe I'll have some whiskey just to
we'll exercise
to calm you down a little bit.
some of those jokes.
But that's the issue. They've been in silos, right? Cheers.
Yeah.
And actually bringing them under one fund manager who's looking at the fundamentals and saying that maybe we don't need X telecoms or this or that. Maybe we're better off piggybacking off this, or why don't we have a base station sharing company that is someone who looks at things like that, rather than having one Telecel booster here and then having an Net1 booster there, then having two fiber cables running, one DNet one DTEL one, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So as government itself, having a fund manager consolidating those things, I think is a brilliant move.
Yeah, but so I'm going to push back because I'm a hardcore free market capitalist, and I'm going to say, why not just sell all of them?
Yeah,
to the extent that you can't sell them, liquidate them. Why? Because we've got a 20+ year track record of losing money on these things.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the taxpayer who's basically who gets the bill for all these losses and all this debt. Why not just offload them?
I think that's part of the plan. Not completely offloading, because some of the assets are strategic.
Okay. So which asset is strategic? You're using government language here. You need to. Some of us don't understand.
They're strategic assets that whether it's to security of the state or food security.
Okay, give me an example.
GMB.
Explain it to me like I'm a
GMB is food
6-year-old.
GMB.
So if GMB was owned by me, for example, I'm going to make myself the bad actor here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And I just woke up one day and I decided I didn't want people to access any of the grain in the silos.
That's a national risk.
Would the state be powerless though to deal with me? Because the silos literally are in Zimbabwe. Okay, the infrastructure is in the country. So the point I'm trying to
You're taking us backwards as a country. You're taking us backwards as a country. We've been there before.
I'm just saying. The point I want to make is sometimes what's strategic is not the ownership. Okay, you want to have the power to be able to say there's a crisis, there's a famine in this part of the country, so you need to move X amount of grain from these silos to this part of the country, or that sort of thing. You can still have those powers, right, over private sector actors. Okay, but the guys running the business on a day-to-day are private sector actors. If they lose money, it's not the taxpayers' money, it's private capital. But so you don't have to marry the strategic importance of certain things with the actual businesses. I don't know whether that makes sense.
You can't separate the two, unfortunately. And for you to be able to control an asset, you need to have control of it. So I'm not against privatization. I'm all for it. Bringing in private players. So I would take a few of those companies, clean them up, right? So park the debt somewhere or ring fence the debt with current cash flows. List at least maybe 49% of that company on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange or the VFX, right? Once you list it, private players come in, pension funds come in, insurance companies come in, right? And you just ensure that the management is private sector and it's all run, but control or majority stake of a strategic asset is key. If that makes any sense.
No, I hear you, but it's still like you can. So if we talk about GMB, for example, right?
Yeah.
Even if I agreed with you that it's strategic, which we can have a debate about that. You can say, you know what, we're going to privatize it, but the new company that's going to run it doesn't own the silos. The silos are owned by the state, right? You're just going to lease them. Okay. Like you can put checks and balances. You can like the bits and pieces of these companies that you feel strongly are of strategic importance for whatever reason. You can actually ring fence those. If you say, so NRZ, you say, look, the railway lines are a key in national infrastructure. They can't be owned by a private entity, but the operating company can be private. You can actually figure out.
And coming up solutions right now.
And when you,
it's a win-win.
Because assets is very hard for to lose money just owning an asset that's not operating.
Yeah.
But you can lose lots of money. In fact, there's one of my clients loves repeating this mantra that the fastest way to lose money is to go into business. Because if you go into business and you don't know what you're doing, you're going to lose much more money than you could in a mall.
True.
So I think that's the challenge, and this is not just true in Zimbabwe. I think it's true across the world that governments are not great at managing businesses, right? So if you look at South Africa, when they owned South African Airways, they pumped in billions of rands over 20 years. They failed miserably. Even in the US, you had those two mortgage institutions, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. They just blew up in the global financial crisis, 2006. So governments are not great at running businesses. And my view is they shouldn't run anything that's for profit. They should do things that are about, national infrastructure. They should focus on governmental business, not for profit business. What's your take on that view?
I think it's the same reason why we have asset managers, right? Not everyone should be running a pension fund, or not everybody has the know-how to run a pension fund. So what do? You go pick an asset manager, you give them money, and they manage it by themselves, right? As a separate entity. Okay. So government is doing the exact same thing. It has assets, it has income. It is now parking it into a sovereign wealth fund, say, hey, fund manager, can you go and run this? So the asset is mine. So why should government be limited to playing in for-profit area, right? It wants profit. We need the profit, right? So you allow a separate entity, an arm of government, which the Act has just enforced, to then go and be a commercial entity.
I need to just push back a little bit and correct you. It's not an act. statutory
SI,
instrument.
okay.
156 of 2023. So we've
okay,
so far this year we've done 150, which is a whole other rabbit hole on its own. Like, how are we on 156? It's like, we're just halfway through September and we've done 156.
There's things to fix.
SIs.
It's things to fix to get parliamentarians to sit around.
Oh yeah. Oh, by the way, and you're reminding me that we have a whole parliament in a whole new parliament building, right? So why aren't they passing laws? Why do we have 156 statutory instruments?
You're asking me?
Yeah. You're the government guy. That's a hill you chose to go and die on.
Former.
Okay, so help me understand.
Whiskey's too strong. I'm gonna go back to my beer.
Help me.
You try to give me the same thing.
Help me understand how we,
Okay, so because I'm sorry, I'm gonna speak in my government language now. The Second Republic. There's so many things that needed to be fixed and need to be fixed now, right? So the SIs, as much as I don't like how many they are, but sometimes you need to move with speed because of how quickly things change on the ground in Zim. You know that on a daily basis, you can wake up tomorrow, something would have changed, the rate would have moved, or this would have changed, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you need to move with pace to address all of this, the speculators, people hedging here with that, and so
the
forth.
economic sabotage.
Yeah, economic sabotage. Yes. So, you need to act fast. So sometimes I understand why. I don't think they're necessary to be so many, but I kind of get sometimes when you need to squash something immediately. The problem needs to be solved now. And for you to wait for Parliament to sit and then it takes a while. But yes, I don't agree with the number of SIs. It's something we need to address. And now we've got a new government, some new ministers. Hopefully that will come along. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, so this Mutapa investment fund, it's huge. It's a behemoth.
It's massive.
It's got,
massive.
look, 20 doesn't sound like a big number in terms of the number of entities in there. But those are big businesses. Even the zombie ones are quite big. Is it practical though? Are we being fair to the future CEO and chief investment officer to actually give them this portfolio? Like, can that structure actually work?
I think so, because for how many counters would we analyze on the ZSE? Okay, you're talking of 20 companies that are government entities. I can tell you when...
Well, most of the stuff that's in Kuvimba, to be fair, was in the private sector for the longest time.
Yeah.
So that's different. That's the only part that I actually think is wealth in there.
Yeah.
Everything else, when I look at it, I don't...
Okay, like what's a dog for you?
The question is, what's not a dog? So NRZ...
Okay, let's stop there. Real estate.
Yeah, they own a lot of real estate,
Yeah.
but they're
So is
bleeding
that a
cash
dog?
No. They have assets. Look, we can't take that away from them, right? They have assets that have value. But, if you look at the balance sheets and you look at how much debt they have and you look at the size of the losses, it's just...
Debt, ring fence, get cash flow coming in, bring in private operators like you're saying.
Yeah.
So for every dollar that comes in, 20 cents is going back to repaying the debt. You've cleaned up NRZ, get a strategic partner in, whether it's a Transnet or whatever, and you run. It's start making profits tomorrow. It's that simple. Which other dog? Give me another dog.
Yeah, but look, you could probably apply that reasoning to all of them. And if it was that simple, though, why bother with the whole structure, right? Why not just do exactly what you said for NRZ, then go to the next one, CSC, and just one after the other, just fix them.
No, government is not a fund manager. That's why they've created this thing. They're not fund managers. They govern. That's their job, to govern.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the fund manager must come and say, okay, CSC, what's the issue? Where's the certification for exports to Europe? Let's get that on track. What do we need to do with the abattoirs? Are they halal? Can we bring in export of goat to Saudi Arabia? Right?
Yeah.
Fund manager. right? That's how you're looking at. You look at efficiencies. What can we dispose? What real estate do you have? What can we open up? How can we decentralize this? Okay, we need to move this product. How do we move it? Who is the distributor?
But
you know what I mean?
But these businesses are so different. So you've got Kuvimba Mining House, which has a whole portfolio of different minerals that it does. You've got a telco company. You've got a railway company. Like, if you were given the mandate tomorrow, right? Tino, go out there and hire the CEO and the CIO of Mutapa. Like, what would you look for in a CEO for such a thing? Because what skill set would you require to be able to manage this thing?
I need someone who has been a fund manager, who has managed multiple companies that are different. Because in a portfolio, you hedge against different shocks. So telecoms can have one. Remember when the Seacom cable broke that one time?
Yeah.
And we were out. We were lights out, I think, for a day or two.
Yeah.
So you can't have everything in telecoms. You can't have everything in transport.
You need a diverse portfolio.
I need someone who has handled a diverse portfolio to begin with. The SI specifically also talks about being able to invest internationally. So need someone who's dealt with foreign investment, right? I think that's key. Someone who's also aware of SMP.
Are you campaigning for this job?
No. Beer. I'm not campaigning for anything. I am not campaigning. Which camera am I in? That one. I am not campaigning for anything.
Because all the traits you've described so far are the traits that you have.
Why are people always trying to get me into trouble? There's a friend of mine who, Phil, posted something. I posted something on Facebook. And he's now going in and he's trying to get me into trouble. I'm like, why are you guys always trying to get me into trouble?
No, don't worry. The producer's not here. He would jump up and down. And he'd be like, you need to pay for self-promotion on this show. But, since the patients are running the asylum, you've got nothing, anything to worry about.
Cheers. You're not here today, boss. No, but someone with some sort of international experience. It's key as well.
And shouldn't I'm just thinking out loud here. Shouldn't if it's going to be run like a fund, right? Shouldn't the CEO also be the chief investment officer? Like, why separate those roles?
Governance.
Okay. Yeah. Just unpack it for me.
No. So the chief investment officer can come up with his ideas. I'm the CIO, the chief investment officer. Yeah,
the CIO.
Yes,
it's okay. You can say that on the show. Do those three letters make you nervous?
So the chief investment officer can come up with ideas, right? So the chief investment officer might be a technocrat.
Yeah.
Right. The CEO should be someone with some sort of government experience and understands the agenda. So you have the bright ideas from this young budding CIO, right? Mm-hmm. But the CEO needs to keep him in check. There, what I think is this asset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone who understands the strategicness from the government point of view. Okay. So it balances out. I think it's important to have both. I think it's good.
Yeah, because some of the best performing funds in the world, what you'll find typically is that the CEO is also the CIO. And we can go into the rabbit hole about governance, like whether, companies should have chairmen who are also CEOs, or you should split those roles. But I can understand in the context of government that you want to be seen to have the best governance structures possible.
And you've just mentioned something very important. Executive chairman. I think that should be banned completely in any company or any institution.
Why?
An executive chairman, a chairman is the one who brings some sort of maturity and sanity to the whole thing. CEO can go at Spengereka looking for this and that and all these wise ideas. And that's your job. You're supposed to. But the chairman is usually someone much older, much more experienced, right? It's kind of like Senate.
Yeah.
Right. The board is like Senate, right? So you can come through Parliament with all these crazy ideas, and Senate must be like, okay, the elders must come and say, okay, calm down, you guys. So if you have an executive chairman, it's disaster. Because this person can just wake up one day and there's no one to check him.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be checked. There's no one to check him, and he just does what he wants. So,
But
that's a disaster.
the argument sometimes is that it slows things down. You know, when you have lots and lots of checks and balances, your capacity to be nimble, to move quickly, is actually constrained. And sometimes that's like when you have businesses, like a lot of the businesses that have been put into Mutapa have urgent issues. You need a guy who can hit the ground running and get things done. You need a person, an operator who will just execute. And so if every time he needs to make an important decision, he has to go through these committees and structures, then it's like, fighting with one hand tied to your back.
I don't think it's slowing anything down. And when you say slowing things down, we're talking about a state. We're not talking about a private company that's operating out of tin world. We're talking about a state. A state is there forever. So there's nothing like slowing things down like that. I get what you're saying, but a state needs to do things properly, and checks and balances are proper. There's a little institution called ZAC, right? The thing is, if you've got an executive chairman running around by himself, signing off everything, if anything goes wrong, ZAC, I don't know however you want to pronounce it, anti-corruption.
Yeah.
It's hammering down. But if you've got committees and say, guys, this went through this committee, it was escalated to here, but that's a board. So committee, management, board committee, chairperson signed off. How many checks and balances is that? I think that's very important. It's needed. And also just to protect the CEO as well. Because you could end up in a lot of hot soup. Not everyone is vying. Whoever the CEO is going to be is going to have a tough job. Not everybody's going to want him to win. Right? A lot of people, maybe some angling or just don't like whoever that person is going to be. He's going to have a tough job in that position. It's a hot seat.
So everything you've described so far is somebody who's never worked in government. Or am I missing something?
You need...
Or are you saying the CEO should, because he's thinking about things from a national perspective, from the government's perspective, he should have some government experience, but the CIO can be 100%
either or
private operator?
Yeah, either or. Yeah, CIO, go for it. CEO has to have some sort of government experience, understands the strategic aspect of what government is trying to achieve in the medium to long term. It's not just about the short term.
And, hypothetically speaking, if you were doing a great job running Mutapa as CEO, what would it look like in your mind in 5-10 years?
No fund.
No fund.
It's going to be a fund that is globally investing.
Okay.
A force to reckon with. Takes strategic positions, even in areas of growth that normally probably government wouldn't invest in. The tech area, I think it's going to be it is quite huge, and it's blowing up. AI is the new thing, right? We need, so for the government in itself to start looking at AI, under maybe a Ministry of ICT, maybe not, as no fund, someone who's sitting there and actually looking at developers and what's happening. Okay, fine. Bard has come on from Google. What's happening with Bing? Okay, what's the story? AI chats. What can AI actually do? How can we incorporate this into government? And you know what I mean? So you need someone who is dedicated to doing that and not worrying about the day-to-day running of government. So I think it will be a globally invested fund, hopefully in a lot of cash-generating businesses that pay a lot of dividends. Also strategically investing in the areas that you don't like so much. Like,
for example, just remind me.
in Muzarabani. To be a very diverse group that pays out a dividend biannually. That's what that's 10-year vision biannually. Because right now we've got a couple of things to fix.
For sure. Yeah. And then, what kind of capital do you think this thing needs to raise, and how would you raise it? You've in your past lives been involved in raising money.
Simple. List
the investment fund.
List the good assets. Right? So you take there's some performing assets in that list.
Yeah.
A few.
Yeah, so Kunyamba is one of the better ones.
List it. Get the capital in.
But here's another idea. Why not list the whole thing? Why not take Mutapa Investment Fund, and if we think that perhaps the New York Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange might be unfriendly, or there's sanctions risks, look at African bourses like the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and go there and say, listen, we need to raise $10 billion. Do you think that's a good idea? And do you think you'd actually be able to raise a meaningful amount of money for a fund like that in a place like South Africa?
Okay, so the problem is that Zimbabwe is a very good asset in itself as a country. It's a brilliant asset. The problem is that the perceived, or depending who you ask and talk to, perceived risk of the country. So I'll give an example. I could give you the same amount of bricks, same amount of cement, same amount of finishings, roofing, tiling, everything. That house will cost the exact same amount of money to construct. The real estate is what then matters, right? So if I have a double-story, see, now you don't want to say a certain place. Okay, I'll say my hometown. Great. If I build a double-story in Bindura, versus me building the same double-story. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Mesh Central. Yes. I'm pretty proud of it. So if I build a double-story in Bindura versus a double-story in Brook.
Yep.
Chalk and cheese.
In terms of the valuation. Because of location.
Because of location.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, we've been deemed as bad location by the international community, right? So we've got the asset. The brick and mortar is right there, right? But it's just the location. So if we try list that fund, we're not going to raise the money that we deserve because of our location, our perceived risk.
Okay, that brings us to the next part of the conversation, which is something else that's been in the news lately, which is the Oxford Economics report on Zimbabwe, right? We're not going to get into the weeds of it, because we're not pedantic like Tinashe. We're just going to look at it at a very high level and say, look, basically what they said is that in Africa, Zimbabwe has the highest risk and or offers the lowest returns.
Yeah.
So I think, it's important for us to just apply our minds, as analysts who live here, and we also follow what's happening elsewhere in Africa. I mean, there are, in as much as we can agree that Zimbabwe's got problems, there are other parts of Africa that have
Somalia,
that have that have bigger problems than us.
They know terrorist bombings in Zim.
South Sudan, right? So how is it that do you think that Oxford is being fair in their report, just saying that we're the worst on the continent? And if you think the answer to that question is no, then how are the very smart people over there at Oxford getting it wrong?
I have to pick my words very carefully. We are definitely not the worst place to invest in Africa. That by far. If anything, we're actually on a big rebound. If you look at our tobacco, look at our exports, our minerals. Zim is picking up, right? In terms of production, the primary sector, production, agriculture, mining, tourism. We're actually on the up, right?
Yeah.
Numbers don't lie. So the problem that we have is that, first of all, we did a big no-no, right? The biggest no-no was, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, the land
reform. But that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, people are still bitter to us. We're gonna keep paying for that for a very long time. Because if Zimbabwe is allowed to succeed, what are you telling the rest of Africa?
That land reform is okay?
And then what's gonna happen in South Africa?
Okay. Yeah. That's a very interesting, cynical view. So you think that we're
being punished unfairly. We get a Zim risk on top. So let's say Zim risk. I think Zim risk is between maybe 3 to 6%.
Yeah.
At most. I'm just saying, if you want to be really really tough depending on what area, what sector you're in. I'd say 3 to 6%, right? But you see us getting punished at 15 to 20, 25 sometimes.
But to be a devil's advocate,
Yeah.
If you are able to go to a person who has title of something and just expropriate it, doesn't that increase your risk profile?
Are we going into this discussion? Are we really going into this discussion?
No, I'm just being a devil's advocate. And because
I hear you, but I don't agree on how that whole process went through, but something needed to be done, right? I would have done it differently, but something needed to be done.
Yeah. So okay, look, I think we can get bogged down in land from quite easily.
Yeah, please.
But I do want to share with you something interesting that a mate of mine pointed out, which is we've agreed to compensate these guys. Well, you know this already, 3.5 billion, right? And he did his own analysis of that number. Like, is it reasonable that there is $3.5 billion worth of improvements on the farms? And his assessment was no, that number is probably overstated materially.
It sounds like it. I wouldn't know. I'm not a farmer like that.
And what we're actually paying for, without saying it out loud, is the land. So if that's the case, I mean, this is speculative. So don't take, you shouldn't take anything we're discussing here too seriously, because we don't know what we're talking about. But so if that's the case, if we've actually come up with a settlement, right?
Yeah.
And it's in the public domain, it's been accepted,
Yeah.
right? What's outstanding is the modalities of how we actually raise the money and pay.
Yeah.
Okay. So can we, if this is where we are, how is land reform still an albatross on our neck?
It's how we did it.
Yeah, but now we're sorting it out, right? We're saying, okay, here's
Yeah.
3.5 billion.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah. But we're still under Zidera.
Yeah. Okay. So we do.
Right.
But that doesn't stop a lot of investment. So you saw that 400 million that came in for lithium.
Yeah.
If you look at Zimplat's public statements, they're very bullish on Zim. They're pumping.
Is that investment?
They're pumping in.
Is that investment?
I do think it's an investment.
How?
Yeah. They're expanding the operation, so they're actually bringing in hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Let's look at Zimplats. Thank you for bringing it up, because it's something that I've always wanted to discuss. I'm going to get in so much trouble. A company that is coming.
Well, like I said, the patients have taken over the asylum, so we can
let's look at it. A company is coming, digging up a resource.
Yep.
Right? Our resource. Taking it out, paying a Mickey Mouse royalty. Right? That thing gets processed in South Africa for value addition.
Yeah.
Then gets processed, or maybe some of it cheap. And where's this value being realized? On the Australian Stock Exchange. Right? So when you talk about investment and they're like, oh, we built a road. No, it's to move your stuff. Oh, we built a clinic. No, it's for your employees. We did housing. It's for you to retain senior management. So when you say investment and you talk about mining companies, I'm a bit iffy on the actual investment. If we are to be real about proper investment,
Yeah.
process that thing to as much as possible that you can in country. Don't crash down to little minute pieces and say, that's value addition. Concentrate. No, that's not investment. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we understand, raise capital, give them a time frame. I say in the next, by 5 years, I want to see X. By 10 years, value addition must be, I'm giving you 10 years. That's what I would do. I'll give you 10 years. But don't tell me that there's no skills transfer on processing platinum. There's no skills transfer on processing copper. There's no skills transfer on even, gold at least, we've got Oryx or something. Don't go to gold. Don't go to gold. Please. This has been a clean show so far.
We'll leave gold alone.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're not transferring the skills to the people of Zimbabwe.
So you sound like an evangelist for the beneficiation camp.
Yes.
And I'm on the other side of the argument.
Oh my goodness.
And so look, I think, skill sets are different. Skill sets, temperament, risk appetite is different. So, for example, if I own a dairy farm, right, and I'm a good dairy farmer, right, my core competence is to look after those cows and milk them every day, right? The competence to value add and make cheese and make ice cream and make all these other dairy products that have been value added. I might not have the interests, the skills, the temperament, the competence, right? I'm just interested in looking after the cows and selling the milk. Right? From the milk step to ice cream and yogurt and cheese, it's a different entrepreneur, it's a different skill set, and so in the defense of the miners, right, the primary extractors of these resources, what I would say if I was in their shoes, I'd say, look, my core competence is knowing where this thing is in the ground, mobilizing all the technology, equipment, people that I need to get it out the ground at the lowest cost possible, and then I'm done. If you, as the government of Zimbabwe, think that this concentrate, the platinum concentrate, or whatever other mineral it is, can be worth 10 times more if it is further processed in a particular way, more power to you. Well, I can sell it to you at the same price I'm selling it to the South Africans or whatever. Why don't you take it off my hands? Because I don't have that skill set of refining it, of adding value. And I don't have the temperament or interest in doing that.
Okay. First of all, before moving, I want to go back to your example of dairy.
Yeah.
But before going back, do you know that there's so many other minerals? We're thinking we're exporting ore. Mm-hmm. There's so many other minerals on South Africa. So many that we're not even getting paid royalties on. Anyway, that's a story for another day.
Yeah.
Let's go back to your milk example. So you're the milk farmer, right? Mm-hmm. You, Rufaro.
Yes, I like the idea of milking things.
Yeah. You're in Zim. There's an age limit on this thing, guys. Anyway, so you're in Zim, you milk the cow, and it. Where's the national leader? You send the milk to Messi, and then go dairy board. And then Messi has got this, my equipment, and it breaks down everything, my yogurt, my ice cream, my chichichi.
Yep.
That's Messi employing hundreds, if not thousands of people.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Tavai Pabo. Ice cream, Nutty Squirrel, Monster Mouse, Green Giant.
Yeah.
Is given to a team of guys. And
and they sell it, they make a living.
They make a living. There's the farmer, transporter, dairy board processing plants.
Yep.
Transporter again, distribution, and then the guys themselves who then go sell. Right? That's value addition. We're not exporting milk.
Yep.
You see my point?
Yeah,
that's value addition.
I'm the
Don't
farmer.
Tell me, South Africa. No, that's not value addition.
Yeah, but I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm simply saying, as the farmer in this example, I don't care what you do with the milk. You can export it, you can beneficiate here.
That's what government comes in. So government comes and says, guys, ice cream. You see what I mean? Same thing with mining.
Yeah, but so it's not the mining company's problem. It's the government's problem. So Mr. Government guy.
So we should not be former.
Yeah, the mining houses are doing what they do. They're competent. They're getting it out of the ground.
What I'm saying is, let's look into it.
Yeah, so I think that if the state feels very strongly that we're leaving a lot of money on the table by not beneficiating, by not value adding, then they must make a plan for at the same price that the mine, because it's like telling somebody that because we want to make the jewelry here, it's like telling a gold mine, you must sell us the gold at international spot price minus 20%. No, as long as they're willing to pay the international spot price, right? I don't think any of the mining houses in Zimbabwe care who they're selling to. Yeah. The reason why they export is because there's nobody here in the country who's put their hand up and said, I can take it off at that price. So they have to ship it out, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's incumbent
No. You see, that person who's taking that ore is feeding themselves. It's not like they're selling it onto the market. they're feeding themselves into their own smelting and whatnot processing. Nduti, why are you processing in Joburg?
They can't process it in
We are in
here.
Portugal, we are talking about the duty free, come process. Set up, here's the land, here's the land for free. Duty free, everything. Bring wherever you bring in to set it up and skill transfer to people. They say to pay my visa, 5 to 10 years. And did it. Distribute, set it up. Why are you transferring dead product or unprocessed product across the border? For what reason? Set it up here. Employ our people. Give them the skills, the know-how. Let's do it ourselves. And at some point, we'll actually be able to set up to make those smelting plants. Yeah.
But what's stopping us? Exactly what you said. Why haven't we done it over the last? We've been independent for 43 years. Why haven't we done it?
To be honest, we've had other problems to first settle. Look at the United States. 400 years. Guys, 43 years is not a long time, huh? I'm saying, look at countries that you're saying we're in comparison with.
I'm not comparing us to the US.
Hundreds of years ahead. Hundreds. Right? So we're still in teething stages. I think we will get there eventually. Eventually we will get there. But still, just teething issues.
Okay. Now, the producers are jumping up and down, but I have one more question.
Are we done?
And look, you see, time flies when you're having fun. And like I said, the inmates are running the asylum, so we are having fun. We're not actually, being disciplined and following a script the way we would if Tinashe was here. Like whipping us into line. No. We need to move on. We're just two blokes in a bar having a drink.
And don't think this is gonna end. Don't think this is gonna end when you guys are gone.
We're gonna carry on for sure.
We'll send you our location. App me, and we'll send you all of these drinks. Come join us.
So whether we agree with the Oxford Economics report or not, the sad truth of the matter is that it's out there and it's shaping the perception of our country. So if you had a mandate, right? You got a call from a very high office and you were told, look, from tomorrow, Tino, you're going to be Zimbabwe's investment relations officer. Which I was.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
We're not happy with this Oxford Economics report.
Yeah.
Right? We need to counter the negative perception of our country that it has created. And you were setting up a campaign to go to the world's capital market and tell them that actually this Oxford report is nonsense. What would your key, like if you had like a 3-point argument?
I think it's very simple.
What would it be?
Number one, Zimbabwe must not speak about itself. Let other people speak about Zimbabwe. So look at the companies, Iwana, Zimplats, whatnot, all these people who are benefiting from Zimbabwe, right? We've got the oil and gas, and Scott McMillan's doing a great job marketing Zim. Like he's really saying, guys, it's a workable environment. This is what we're doing. People like Invictus, right? So we look at those companies and we say,
I thought of a different McMillan. You said that. But carry on.
Anyway, you look at...
And I thought of a different Scott.
So when you... Okay. I think my drinks are sugar. So you look at people, never try advertise yourself too much. Let other people speak about you. That's number one. And I'll let them do my articles or encourage them, give them incentives to speak well about Zim in their jurisdiction. The Americans in here making mad money, right? But they're just not speaking about it. Yep. They're like sanctions, you know what I mean? So now that's my first point. My first bullet point. The second one, unfortunately, is going to sound very cheesy, but we do need to start doing things by ourselves, for ourselves, right? If no one's coming to save you, and my sister always likes that point. Shamari, no one's coming to save you. No one. Apana, you're by yourself. You know what I mean? And and probably everybody's been through that. Like when you're at a downtime in your life.
You know who your friends are.
Nobody came and said, Fufaro, Wango, my one, 4,000. And or 10,000. I can see Chimbokava like it. Nobody's coming to put 10,000 on the table for you. No one. So you do it yourself. You sort it out yourself. I think those are my two main points. I don't even need a three. I don't know. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, and on that very cheerful note, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Have a great weekend. We will continue our operations here at this venue.
Should we tell them the address? Should we tell them the address?
We will not announce the address. And because the patients are running the asylum, my sign-off is going to be good. And if you can't be good at it.
Be good at it.